Okay, so we're still talking our infants, 0 to 2, coming out of the womb, what they're learning, how they're growing, who they're becoming. This screencast is going to cover Piaget's sensorimotor stage. Now, except it covers a lot more. What I have done is taken the emotional, language, motor, and Piaget stages and combined them so that I've taken each one of Piaget's stages and looked at how the baby develops in all of these different ways rather than having it fragmented out. I think that it integrates the information and helps us to learn a little bit more of what the sort of whole gestalt of a baby at these particular ages and stages. So we're going to take a look at that. What we're going to start out with, though, is very briefly, just one slide here on language development, the understanding that it's a universal sequence. Just a few things to understand about that. That though timing of language acquisition varies, the way that babies tend to learn universally grows in the same way, meaning they go from sounds to babbling to words, first words, two-word sentences. They have the sequences the same, though the timing might be a little bit different in terms of when these stages happen, but they still happen in the same order. So that's what we mean by the universal sequence of language. And there's 3 theories about how language is acquired. One comes a little bit more from behavioral theory, that children need to be taught language, and that that parents are, the teachers of that caregivers and parents and so forth, and that through conditioning and reinforcement, baby makes a sound, mom and dad, yay, reinforces that. They continue to do it. Baby says a word that sounds, that sounds like a word. Yay, oh, we said bottle, bottle. And so then it's continually reinforced and conditioned in the child. Sociocultural theory, Vygotsky's theory, that we are driven to learn for social inclusion. So it's a little bit like it's still taught from the outside, but that as children grow, as babies grow, they come to see and realize that everyone around them is speaking in this language. And so they're driven to know this so that they can be a part of the culture and the family and be included. Cognitive theory, which sociocultural is actually a bit of a cognitive theory, but more kind of a Piagetian from that sort of school theory, says that children teach themselves, that this is an inside-out kind of thing, that they actually are experience expectant in the learning of language. And that Noam Chomsky actually had the idea of a language acquisition device, a LAD, that it was a hypothesized mental structure that enables humans to learn language, that we are encoded with this ability to learn the language of our culture and peoples, and that we are therefore sort of driven from the inside by our development to learn language. So those are just some ideas. We're going to talk about language through Piaget's stages, but just some things to know to begin with. So here, just another quick one, that learning happens from sensation, that sensory information hitting the system, and, excuse me, when it detects any kind of stimulus. And baby is getting bombarded by these. I want you to just imagine coming out of that nice cozy little womb where things are even muffled. Sound is muffled, though it's there, except maybe mom's digestion and heartbeat. Everything else is rather muffled. It's dark. We're rocking. We feel good. And then we come out into a very loud and noisy and bright world. And so baby is thrust into this. And it's like there's no way for us to really understand it, because it's like being thrust into an alien world, but where we have no context for anything. Like, we don't even know what language is. We don't know what objects are. We don't know what we're looking at. And we have no past context of that. So try to wrap your brain around that. For baby, everything is brand new. So they come out and there's all of these sights, sounds, smells, all of this stuff just bombarding the sensory systems. And and the brain sets up to sort of try to begin to sort these, to pick out the things that are reoccurrent and seem important at some level. So the mental processing, the brain interprets a sensation. Perception begins to happen for things that are kind of repeated over and over, and it requires experience. And then cognition comes after that, the ability to think about what we're perceiving, to really be aware of it. So it happens in this order. We go from sensation to perception to cognition. All right, so here we go. Jean Piaget believed adaptation is the core of intelligence. If we can remember back to theories, when we talk about theories, he believed that adaptation is the way that we try to deal with cognitive disequilibrium, that we want equilibrium in our thinking, kind of balance in our thinking, that we get what's going on. And so adaptation is our way of assimilating or accommodating new information. We build schemas about information, and then we take new information, try to stick it into our old schemas. That's assimilating. If we can't, and it requires something new to be known, then we accommodate that information and have to build new schemas. So his first period of cognitive development he called the sensorimotor stage, and it lasts from birth to 24 months, so this first 2 years of life. So there's 3 main stages and 6 substages. So here we go. We have 3 main sensorimotor stages: primary circular, secondary circular, and tertiary, third circular. Now, what these mean, primary circular reactions, is that there is an experience it's a feedback loop, from self to environment and back to self. It's like this great circular reaction of responding back and forth between the environment and baby. And each one has 2 substages. So we are in primary circular reactions. This first stage is between 0 and 4 months, divided into 2 substages. Secondary, 4 to 12 months, divided into 2. And then 12 to 24 months, divided into 2. So we're going to take these one at a time, but we're going to look at them around a lot of babies' learning, not just Piaget, but it's broken up into his timetable. Okay, so Piaget's first stage, that primary circular reactions. Substage 1 is called reflexes, and it only lasts 1 month. Okay, 0 to 1 month. That's it. And all baby has, according to Piaget, are reflexes. And this primary circular reaction is between baby and his or her own body. That's the baby's whole world. They can't even see very far. Their whole world and their whole experience is with their own body. Reflexive motor movements and sensory awareness. So they have sensory stuff coming in, and they have just kind of sensory movements going on. So you have a whole packet that I've created that you can use to look through this as well. That's probably a little more detailed than this information on the screencast is going to give. Motor skills at this time are basically sucking, newborn reflexes, the rooting, which is where when something touches the baby's face, they move their mouth towards it as though looking for food. These are survival reflexes. Staring and waving, that's pretty much all they can do. They might randomly bring their hand to their mouth, but it's by accident. There's nothing coordinated in their actions. These are just involuntary reflexes. They begin to be able to make eye contact as their vision grows. The only language they have is crying, and the only emotions they have are either they're distressed or they're content. So they cry if they're distressed, they're quiet if they're content. That's pretty much it. Synesthesia, we hear about this in adults, that synesthesia, you might have heard of when people can smell colors. It's when parts of the sensory system in the brain overlap each other, that the neural connections kind of get integrated together, that they're not very differentiated or distinct. And so people can sounds have color related to them. Things like this, so they get interconnected. Babies' emotions are pretty synesthetic to begin with because they're not differentiated. These systems within the brain are not really hardwiredly differentiated. That takes experience. So they just have a lot of going on. They cry at whatever, just any kind of discontent. There's not, and so that's all they have. Now there is some newer research with information processing. Let's remember that, earlier research was based on a lot of observation. As we get into information processing and our technology gets better, we can use new styles of research with babies. We can look at their brain activation. We can measure their eye dilation. We can get very micro movements we can begin to see. And this gives us more information about them. There's something called habituation that is used to see what babies can learn. And that means that we sort of bore babies to death. We might show that, we might try to determine something that they know as they get older. And then, so if they know a sound or they know a shape, they're not going to know it at 0 to 1 months, but when they know a shape, they know circle. So we show them circle, circle. Eyes might get bigger, in micro ways. There may be things that show us that this is something new to baby. Over time, if we habituate them to it, they get bored of it and it's not new anymore. And so then we introduce something new and we see all of that novelty micro expressions again. And this shows us that baby is learning, that this is something new, that they are aware that there's something new in their environment. So we have new ways of seeing what baby knows. So, there's some, and none of this is real sound yet, but like I was reading about research that showed that, like, if a baby's head was kept still, that they might hear mom's heartbeat. If they moved it, they couldn't hear it. So babies would learn to keep their head still. It would go the other way too. If they moved it, they would hear mom's heartbeat, and if they were still, they wouldn't. And so learning becomes like, learning what they have to do, conditioned to some extent to do what they want in order to get the feedback that they want. Very, very early, very, very like newborns. That kind of thing takes a lot of replication. I haven't looked more into how much more we know. So anyway, that's 0 to 1, substage 1. We're still on primary circular reaction. So what that means is baby's body. Babies' experience is mostly with their own body. That's their primary experience. Age 1 to 4 months. Beginning of coordination. I named that. That's not a Piaget name. Okay, Piaget's name is first acquired adaptations, first habits. So baby begins to form first habits. A pleasurable reflex becomes a habit. So as baby's moving around their hands and the thumb accidentally pops into the mouth, and then, that's pleasurable. Right? Oh, that's pleasurable. So then so we move from the motor reflex to a stimulation that creates pleasure back to the motor reflex. And as coordination grows, baby can begin to purposefully put the thumb in the mouth. And this we begin to see at this time. So another one of these is when we see learning this so that's a first habit that can be created as baby learns within the body system what brings pleasure and tries to repeat it. First adaptations in learning can be something like, it takes a very specific type of sucking to get milk out of a nipple. And so baby learns this a newborn learns this. We don't think about that as learning, but it is. They have to learn how to use their tongue and suck specifically in order to get milk out. And so then when they're given a bottle, it doesn't work the same. So they may assimilate this new incoming information and it doesn't work, and they have to adapt and learn a new way to suck in order to get milk out of the bottle. And then if they're given a passy, they learn that it doesn't give milk at all, but it might give comfort. So that's all learning for baby, in this 1 to 4 months. And, they find that if you want a baby to take a passy, do it fairly early before they find their thumb. Once they find their thumb, they may not take the passy anymore. Vice versa. So, they learn what they like. So their motor skills, 3 months, they can't grab But if something's put in their hand, they have that grasper reflex. They may be able to hold on to it, but they can't grab on their own. 2 months, they begin to make, for language, they begin to make meaningful noises, laugh, cry, coo. Now think about this. This is, if all of what they're getting is feedback from their body, as they accidentally kind of make a noise, as that becomes a little more advanced, those systems, and they hear a noise, and it's pleasurable, maybe the vibration is pleasurable, and they learn to do it again. So, this goes along with this. So at 6 weeks, we see a social smile, not just a gassy one, a social smile. 2 to 4 months, laughter. Now, what I like to point out here, our first emotion is joy. Our first emotion is laughter, smiling. And I think that's really lovely, because we pay attention to a lot of the other emotions as we go on. But the very first one, the one we're wired for first, is laughter, because we are enamored by and in awe of what we can do, like the joy that our own body brings us when we're this young, in terms of, whoa, I can suck my thumb and oh, that feels good, and I laughed, or I made a noise, and I'm all about, these sensations and the pleasure they bring, and repeating them, building these habits. Okay, so we're moving on to, and okay, mini manipulator is my name for it, not Piaget's. So age 4 to 8 months, we're moving into secondary circular reactions, substage 3. Okay, so we move out from our body only being our feedback loop to other people and objects in our surroundings. Now baby's becoming more aware of the caregivers and the people around them. They're also learning about the reactions that they can generate in those people. And that's what I mean by, it's not like Stewie, not evil manipulation, but they're learning that they can impact their environment and make things happen. And that's big in this whole secondary circular reaction time period, which actually goes to 12 months. This substage 3 is 4 to 8 months. And it's called making interesting events last. So when baby does something such as shake a rattle, which is what they learn to do by about 6 months, that gives a pleasing sensation, they continue to do it. But they also realize that it brings feedback from the people in their environment. Oh, look at baby, yay! And people smile and laugh. And so baby does it again, because they want to make not only the interesting event of the rattle shaking and the sensation it gives them, but the interesting event of how people respond to it continue. When baby does something that gets a positive response, they repeat the action. So their motor skills help with this, right? They help them have more interesting events. They can grasp on their own by 4 months, though their timing, they might try to grasp, but they get a lot of feedback for that to continue trying, so that by 6 months they can reach, grab, grasp, transfer objects from hand to hand, hold a bottle. Think about 2 months. How much have they learned? Shake a rattle. And so that allows them more opportunity to make more interesting events last with their environment. By 7.5 months, they at 90% are sitting unsupported. So again, we're getting motor skills that are allowing us to interact with our environment more and more and get feedback from our environment more and more that we become aware of. Between 3 to 6 months, they make a larger range of noises. And then from 6 to 10 months, they babble. And babbling is universal. Even deaf babies babble, which I think is really interesting, which shows us that it's encoded at some level to do this. It's not just a feedback loop, but deaf babies will quit babbling sooner because they don't get the feedback from the environment. And about the same time, they can begin to sign, and they get feedback in that way. So that's just an interesting thing. And that continues. So as they get a larger range of noises because they're getting feedback and conditioning and all of that from the environment. Now, this makes a lot of sense if we think about it. Our second emotion online is anger. Now, anger for babies is really more frustration. And if you think about it, I can sit up, but now I can see the world doing a whole lot more that I can't do. And I want to make interesting events last. And I'm really happy when they do, but then maybe, mom may have to go answer the phone when I'm shaking the keys, and they stop paying attention, or the bottle falls and I can't necessarily reach it anymore and I can't move. So they get frustrated. So again, this all rolls together to make more sense about how this is all activating neurons. Sadness in babies is not normal in infants at this point. What it is an indicator of is too much stress and cortisol in the system, that it's getting flooded. And what sadness looks like a lot in babies, I think, is withdrawal. It's not necessarily like tears sadness, but like a withdrawal and a shutdown of the system is so flooded with cortisol that baby just stops, just sort of withdraws. And we'll talk about that more with attachment. All right, so moving on. I'm going to finish all of these. This one might be a little bit longer. Still in secondary circular reactions, so having feedback loops with the environment and people, age 8 to 12 months now. So we're growing a little bit. We can do more. And becoming purposeful is mine. Piaget's is anticipation or means to an end. Piaget believed object permanence came online about 8 months. We'll talk about that. So means to an end, purposeful action. So baby has goals and intentions. So if we look at this, baby is crawling between 8 to 10 months. So now I'm mobile. So now I can see the toy and I can have the goal of going and getting it. I don't have to wait for somebody to bring it to me and get as frustrated by that. I now have goals that I can set and reach for myself. And I'm standing by 9 months, and I'm even, I'm beginning to walk potentially by that 12-month period. So I'm growing in my motor control. I can self-feed somewhere between that, in this time period. So I'm wanting to do more by myself, and I can have the goal of it. Anticipation. I can also begin to read signs for what's happening. I get an understanding of the sequencing of events in my life. I can see that mom is getting her purse and putting on shoes, and I understand that now mom is leaving. And I can have a goal of wanting to go with mom. I can crawl over and pick up my shoe and show mom I want to go. And I can get frustrated and angry if I can't do everything I want to do. Now, between 9 and 14 months, I also can get fear. I can begin to understand as I move away physically, sort of starting to understand that people aren't always there, or I can move away from them and not see them anymore. So fear, separation anxiety, stranger wariness can come online as I'm becoming a little more aware of myself in this world as separate from them. And there was another one here. So Piaget believed that object permanence was the idea that that things that I can no longer see still exist, but they may not be within my eyesight or I can remember them and want them, where before object permanence, they're gone and out of sight, out of mind. Now I can think about them and want them, and I know they're there, and I might not be able to see them, so I can get afraid. He believed that came online about 8 months because all he had was observation to go on. So if he hid the object and the baby just didn't look for it, they didn't know. Now, with information processing and the ability to read micro expressions and so forth in babies and understand more, be able to tell when they can tell that something has changed in the environment, we're actually seeing that at about 4 months. So much, much earlier than Piaget believed. This is what we find mostly with Piaget stages, that, children go through these things, but they happen not necessarily in these just very specific time periods as he marked out. They weren't marcated and, there was not so much of a strict timing. They're more fluid and they happen usually earlier, because he could only go on the observation. And babies are limited by their motor control and motor skills, by things that they still may know, by their verbal and motor skills. So language, though, babbling, 10 months, 10 to 12 months, sounds meant as words. So they might say baba for bottle or blanket or whatever. Only the people around them know what they're saying, but they get used to that. And so about 12 months, the first word might pop out. All right, so we're getting there. Now we're into tertiary circular reactions. This is our third level, and it goes from 12 to 24 months, but this stage 5 is 12 to 18 months. This is the beginning of toddlerhood. We're no longer infants. We're no longer babies. We now can toddle, so we are toddlers. And substage 5 is active experimentation. So they have, in this tertiary circular reactions, they're exploring their world more and going out into it and seeking it out more, their little world. Piaget called kids at this age, this 12 to 18 months, little scientists, because they were playing with physics. Now, this can drive parents crazy. They learn through trial and error. They want to know how things work, so they can sit in their high chair and they can pick up now their food and they can drop it and they look over the edge. Oh, look what happens. I can do it again and again and again. And I'm just trying to see what happens. And they're kind of playing with physics. I can try to put something in the toilet and see if it flushes. I want to see what happens. And it's all by trial and error. Curiosity leads to acting before thinking. So this is a real curiosity with my world stage. Oh, there's an animal. My cat has a tail, and I'm going to pull it and see what happens. They act before they think at this stage. And they knock something over. They might knock Big Brother's huge tower of blocks down. Whoop! They didn't really mean to be mean. They just wanted to see what was happening. What would happen if they did that? Now, based on the reactions they get, they do learn. So they have motor skills. So they're walking. They can stack little blocks and try to knock them down. They can get the spoon to their mouth. They can also fling it. They can mark with crayons. 15 months, they're 3 blocks. They can remove their socks. By 18 to 20 months, they're running. They're babbling, sounds meant as words, first words. Up through about 18 months, they have a very slow growth of words, 50 words. And their emotions are becoming more differentiated between, if they're mad, if they're frustrated, if they're whatever they're feeling at that moment, sad because you're going away. Now, so, some sadness is real, can go online as they get that fear. And they're more differentiated, but they're very intense. I cry when I'm upset. I laugh when I'm happy. They kind of get what they need to do with those emotions in terms of expressing them, but they're very intense. Okay, so our last one, 18 to 24 months. This is the age of imagination starting, and world exploration still, mental combinations, problem solving. So symbolic thought. Imagines consequences and how to solve problems. So now I've tried trial and error. I tried to pull the cat's tail and I got scratched. So now I can think about what the consequences are going to be if I see the cat and I see the tail. Now, I'm still not going to be very emotionally regulated. So that doesn't mean it's going to stop me the first time, but I at least have the capacity maybe to think about it, imagine what the consequences might be and how and then if my toy falls behind the couch, I can think about how I might get back there and solve that problem. Pretend play becomes big. Sticks are not just sticks anymore. They can be swords or guns or wands or whatever I want them to be. Boxes can be rockets. Deferred imitation comes online. I can see, dad shaving, and then we might see little one doing that same motion later. So deferred imitation means seeing it but doing it later. So that's a form of memory happening. They do think before acting now, again, like with the cat's tail, in little bits. For some children who are more cautious, 6 might even come with 5. They may not just try things. They may not be as fearless. Not all children by temperament are. This is sort of what happens in a kind of typical scenario. Motor skills, they're running, they're jumping. Motor control, fine motor is getting better for coloring, building things, holding the sippy cup, I want to do it on my own. And they're trying and they're doing these things. And, the thing is, there's a lot of accidents in this time period too. And why is that? Because I can jump off the couch and I have imagination and I think that I'm Superman. And I'm going to pretend to be Superman and I'm going to jump off the couch And I can't fly. I think I was a little older than this, but I broke my ankle jumping off of a coffee table, probably thinking I could fly or something, who knows. But, their imagination, just they build on things, and their language grows hugely. About 18 months, they have a naming explosion, 3 or more words learned a day. And it's built by this pretend play and this more interaction with others and all of this going on. Their sentences grow, grammar grows as they hear it and they hear it and they play with it. About 18 months, they get what we call self-recognition. There is a test for self-recognition where they put a dot of rouge on a baby's nose, and if the baby looks in a mirror and they touch their own nose, it shows that they have self-recognition, that they realize what they look like, and they see themselves in the mirror. If they touch the other baby, they think it's somebody else, right? So we get this about 18 months to 24 months. This really strongly comes online. So our final emotions that we talk about can't come online really until we have this self-recognition. And that's pride, shame, guilt, and embarrassment. So we can't really feel proud of ourselves until we start to realize that we are separate from another. And that, we are completely sort of separate beings. Shame for something that we've done, or guilt, or be embarrassed in front of people. So these are the emotions that require some self-awareness, and they come online last. Interesting. There are other animals that have this. I think I mentioned this in another video, but there have been these kind of rouge tests for like elephants, which is really interesting. They have to have really strong mirrors, and they put a huge X on the elephant's forehead, and they put the elephant in front of the mirror. And some, elephants clean themselves by actually putting like dirt on themselves, and then they wash it off. And so for some elephants, they can't tell if they just think it's the dirt or whatever. They don't do anything. But they have seen elephants that will look in the mirror for longer, which is going to be a sign of recognizing something. And when they move away from the mirror, they take their trunk and touch their forehead as though they saw it, and they realize it's them. Dolphins, and I need to learn more about what the form of this test looks like, have this as well. And some great apes, I think, too. But I thought the elephant test was really interesting. So that's it for Piaget. Anyway, you have the packet to look at it. It's in the book. So lots of reinforcement here for this information. Have a good one. Until next time.